faster than a speeding bullet,
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
more powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound.
Hey guys, Jared Moon here from Into 3 Fitness, and welcome to the Better Humanology podcast. Today we have Jeff Martone from Tactical Athlete, and he actually runs the kettlebell certification course through CrossFit. So he knows a ton about kettlebells and kettlebell training, and that's what we dive into today. This isn't some grand philosophical discussion. This is in the weeds on kettlebell training, and that's really what I wanted to talk to Jeff about today because I had a lot of curiosity surrounding his level of experience being into kettlebell training for such a long time. And so things that we discuss that I think that you may find interesting is he talks about how he's used kettlebells and his training history over the years, but not just to get conditioned and not just to get stronger and fitter, but he came from a world where he was really beaten up and broken down from the training that he was doing to using kettlebell training to fix his shoulder joints, to fix his knees, to fix his lower back, and that's the stuff that we dive into, as well as how you can use kettlebells for strength training, for rehabilitation, and for conditioning. So if you really want to get into the weeds on kettlebell training, don't miss this episode. All right, Jeff, super pumped to have you on the Better Humanology podcast, man. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Jared.
All right, so every listener knows that we start off with some challenges, get their mind going, get their blood going, and I like to give that to you today. So could you hit us up? We're going to be doing a fitness challenge, a mental toughness challenge, and a book recommendation. So could we start with the fitness challenge?
Okay, fitness challenge. I would throw out a. It's just basically it's just 10 minutes doing long cycle, which is use 2 kettlebells and you just clean it. Clean the 2 kettlebells, then you jerk them overhead, and just try to do that for 10 minutes without putting the weight down, right? And I don't care what weight you start with. I mean, you could use I'd go light. If you could do it for a guy, if you could do it 16 kilograms, rock on. For a girl, 8 to 10 kilograms would probably be good.
All right, awesome. Yeah, that sounds brutal. 10 straight minutes of that.
That's it.
How about a mental toughness challenge?
Dude, I would say the same challenge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it takes a lot of mental toughness to keep going and not quit.
Oh, no, I would agree with that one. I'm going to have to give it a try, and it's not going to be pretty.
But if you need to rest, here's the key, though. If you need to rest, you can rest in the rack position or you can rest overhead. You can't rest putting them down or in the hang position. So it's either rack or overhead.
Okay.
So
yeah, I don't know if that helps anything, but I like the established rules though. All right, man. And so the last part of the intro here. So how about a book recommendation?
Book recommendation? Actually, I got 2 book recommendations that I'll just throw out there. And one is it's called Jesus Was an Airborne Ranger by John McDougall. Dude, he's a chaplain for the Army Rangers. Phenomenal book. Phenomenal book. I can't recommend it high enough. And especially for the tough guys out there, they'll love it. And the other one is a book called Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs. And for anybody in a relationship, dude, that is the book that will unlock the key to understanding your spouse.
All right. So we found it. Awesome. That's great, man. I have not read either one of those, but I will add them to my list of books to get done. I really appreciate that.
Awesome.
All right,
awesome.
Man. So how about you give us a little background, of maybe your career over the last, decade or two and what you're doing today?
Okay. My career has pretty much been in training and law enforcement and, federal agents, things like that. Really my specialty starting off, I was a firearms instructor, tactics instructor, but really it's always been involved in more like a wrestling control type stuff, basic fighting, fighting's fighting. But with that, there's like always the fitness element because you got to be fit to fight. And so if you don't have, if you don't have the strength, the stamina, if you don't have good technique, then you got issues, So pretty much did that from early 90s all the way up until about 2008 in various capacities and stuff. And then I kind of took about an 8-year break, just doing more training on the physical side with CrossFit, being an SME for their kettlebell program. And that's a blast. I still do that. In my company, Tactical Athlete, train a lot of law enforcement and military. So, but now I'm back. I have the absolute best job ever. I'm back working for the government as a contract instructor, and I'm basically a fitness coordinator for the federal agents I used to train before. And so this is it. So it's like having your own CrossFit/MMA gym that you don't have to worry about membership. You know what I mean? And you pretty much run that on a daily basis, and it's on a range, so I get to shoot and still have fun in that way. So it's like having a bunch of younger brothers. You just train, do a lot of boxing and different things with it. So it's a good time.
Yeah, man, that's really awesome. I know when I was active duty, so they have strength and conditioning coaches and special operations, and I always felt like that was going to be like the those were like the dream job, because like what you said is like you get to just focus on training the people. You don't have to worry about like all the business side of like, yeah, oh no, I need 4 more members this month, or this person canceled, all this stuff. So you really get to focus on honing your craft and making sure that people are actually getting better as opposed to being stressed out about everything else.
That's right. Exactly right.
That's awesome. So let's talk about how the becoming a SME for CrossFit came about. I'm very interested in that process, and your expertise in the kettlebell field.
Sure. Well, I'll just kind of back up in the so in the kettlebell field. This is kind of how things went and how I got involved in kettlebells. Then it ties right in, how I got involved in CrossFit is growing up, pretty much played football, did a little wrestling, martial arts, did a little boxing. But I was very, very, very hard, like on my body, you know what I mean? And in knowing what I know now, it's like, when you're a young guy, man, you just kind of just run full head, you know what I mean? Slam your head against the wall, get up and just keep going, And there's a saying I like to use is like, if you're going to be stupid, you better be tough, because being stupid has consequences, and those consequences kind of early on, dude, I was reaping them, and basically, I was very, very, very injury prone from the time I was like a senior in high school. Like I was a starter for playing football as an offensive, defensive tackle, right? Dude, that year, I made all state. We went to the Super Bowl and stuff, but the reality is like throughout that year, literally like once a week, I'd blow my shoulder out. And I just pop it back in, won't skip a play, and just keep playing. You know what I mean? So the consequences at the end of that first year was surgery, right? So I'm dating myself on this one, 1985. But I'll come back to it because it's pertinent, because the type of surgery I got back then, let's put it this way, like within 2 years, I had to get another surgery. So I probably dislocated that right shoulder easy 30 times, you know what I mean? Like at least 15 times before the first surgery, 15 times after. So even after the second surgery, right? So first surgery is 85, second one was 87. I would still dislocate that right shoulder, really up until I started training with kettlebells. This is probably about the year 2000. You know what I mean? So I'd still have issues with that right shoulder, and not always doing like cool action guy stuff. I mean, my shoulders have come out in my sleep. You know what I mean? If my arms over my head, boom. So that joint was very unstable. And then I dislocated my left shoulder a couple times playing rugby and some other stuff. And but I had a surgery in '89 on that one, which actually is the same surgery that they do today. It's called a Bankart procedure, right? And so the putty flat procedure, basically doesn't work. You know what I mean? There's an orthopedic surgeon that was in one of my kettlebell classes, and he's like, hey man, and I asked him, I go, dude, what's the difference between the putty flat procedure and the bank cart? He's like, well, putty flat. He goes, dude, they stopped doing that in the like late 80s. I'm like, really? Why? He goes, 'cause it doesn't work. I'm like, I could have told you that. You know what I mean? So, but all those, but all that, like, again, I'll still go like full bore all the time. So all these injuries are starting. So the 80s was kind of a bad decade for my shoulders, right? Then the 90s, like, dude, I had like meniscus taken my right knee twice, blew up my ACL. I had that reconstructed, kind of dinged up my back a little bit, and a wacky fall. But, had a couple surgeries, fixed my nose so I could breathe out of it. There's a common theme, and I'm sure in most guys' lives, and I'd say it's denial. You know what I mean? Like, I never even thought I broke my nose, all the years boxing and doing stuff like that. And, that the surgeon, after the second surgery, because the first surgery almost killed me, then I broke my nose twice, like at work. And, then he, like, when he did the second surgery, like, he flat out said, he goes, dude, that was the worst nose I've ever operated on in my life. And the dude shortly retired after that, I'm like, rock on.
Setting personal records.
That's right. So saying, right. So this is kind of leading up to like in my job, like, it was, I very blessed, training with a lot of really good dudes, and always try to be the best. And I always said, if I can't, when the day comes that I cannot lead by example in demonstrating and doing whatever I'm doing, I'm like, it's day I need to switch jobs. And honestly, as I was approaching the year 2000, I'm sitting there like, dude, my body was falling apart. I'm sitting like, man, maybe this is it. Maybe I need to change careers, And, so this is where, and I asked my surgeon too at the time. I'm like, hey doc, I'm like, why is it, I train like a maniac, I do all these things, try to do the right thing, but yet it seems like my joints are like connected by tissue paper. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, it could be genetics, could be this, could be that. And I'm just like, dude, just tell me you don't know, because I honestly don't think he knew. You know what I mean? And but knowing what I know today, it's crystal clear. But one thing he did say, and this is like probably about 97, he's like, hey Jeff, he goes, your job is like that of a professional athlete. And I'll be honest with you, man, I never ever even considered that. I'm sitting like, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, if that's true, which it is, you know what I mean? This is like, dude, I can tell you this. I wasn't training like a professional athlete. You know what I mean? I was training like, you know what I mean? Like just a maniac, no recovery, and just, you know what I mean? Just keep banging my head against the wall and you get the same results. So that's literally, man. So I'm just sit there. I'm like, all right. So obviously I need to change. So I kind of prayed about it and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, and I started doing research. And that's when also I kind of stumbled into Pavel Tsatsouline, who he was in Albuquerque. And this is like, and I was transferring. I was taking another job over at Fort Smith. And so anyway, he's like, it was right before I was leaving. He's doing like a strength seminar and some other stuff, some stretching or whatever. So I go down there, and that's when his book, Power to the People, first came out. And basically it was like, hey, how to get real strong, doing nothing but like a deadlift and military press, right? And you get a total body workout, doing 3x5 method. So I hung out, kind of like, hung out in a seminar. I'm like, that's interesting. You know what I mean? Talk about different muscle recruitment, this and that. I'm like, rock on. So I bought his book. We went over to moved to Fort Smith, and there I was like in charge of recruit training and doing the PT portion for our guys and the combatives portion, along with farms and tactics. But my primary was the PT and stuff like that. So me and another instructor, dude, we started like just doing the deadlifts, heavy presses, maybe some Turkish get-ups, you know what I mean? Before we do the basic, PT stuff with the guys. And back then in that very first class, we were just kind of just running like your typical law enforcement or whatever academy, where a lot of running, a lot of cows, you know what I mean, and all that. So here's the deal, right? Is like anything you practice, you're going to get good at. So on paper, our guys were because we were doing push-ups, pull-ups, running. At the end, were the run times getting better? Yeah. Were the pull-ups, push-ups, all that stuff getting better? Sure it was. But dude, this is what I realized that we were dropping the ball is when we got to the tactical phase of training. because now in the tactical phase, like at this particular point, we're just doing lane training, kind of, guys, small team tactics, moving to contact, all that. Right. So here's the deal. And all these guys are, have a great background. They're former military. Most of them are former military, and some law enforcement, all that. But so what I noticed was on break, because like me and the other instructors, my training partner, like we're like op 4, and just the way it was set up, we're probably covering twice as much ground as the students. It's just the nature of it. But here's the thing: we're hanging out on the break on the side of the road drinking water. And I look at my buddy Rand. I'm like, dude, how you feeling? He's like, dude, I'm feeling fresh as a daisy. I go, you know what, man? I go, so am I. He's like, dude, my knees aren't bothering me. My back's not bothering me. Nothing was bothering me. And I felt super fresh. Then I look over at the recruits, and these guys are younger than us. And dude, they're like falling apart. They're like, oh man, I think I pulled my hamstring. Oh, my lower back's being crushed. Or, it's just like one complaint after another. And I'm like, and I look at Randy and I go, man, I think we're on to something with this functional training. You know what I mean? Because the only thing different between us and them is that we took time and did strength training prior to doing our cals and stuff. That was like the turning point. So I ended up doing more training with Pavel. Then he ended up he used introduced the kettlebell. I was me and another instructor, a friend of mine, we were at the very first kettlebell course he put on. And dude, I'm telling you, that probably that totally training smarter, using kettlebell for conditioning. It definitely rehabbed my lower back, my knees, shoulders, and all that. And then that's how I kind of got started with the kettlebells.
That's I have a few questions. That's an awesome story, a great progression there. But I want to ask, so when you were getting injured all the time, what was your training like then?
Yeah, just a lot of cows, a lot of cows, a lot of, pretty much just cows running, Then I'd still, I'd grapple and do stuff like that, but not so much, not really no barbell work, none of that.
Yeah. And that's something interesting. Coming from the military myself, there are people who can ace the PT test and they think that they're super healthy and they have no problems because the military tests that they put together, they think that since they did good on that, they're the fittest human being on the planet. And I'm like, there's a lot more to fitness than that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And so you moved to doing a lot of calisthenics, so push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, running, and then you moved to barbell training and then kettlebell training. Do you still incorporate a lot of barbell training, or is it primarily kettlebell training that you're doing?
Oh, no. Man, I love all aspects of training. So I'll do, I'm always trying to get better at Olympic lifting. I'll do, regular barbell, deadlifts, all that stuff. Always trying to get better in gymnastic movements. I blend everything now. And let me just backtrack too, because back in the 80s, and this is the other thing too, because this is how I came up with the that term tactical athlete. It's just is like this. It's in the 80s, in the paradigm for fitness, and you already touched on it, for military and law enforcement, is usually there's two types. You got your, for cardio, you had your guys that are long distance runners. Man, they're they could run, but you throw a weight on them, this and that, it crushes them. You know what I mean? But then you had your bodybuilders, which wasn't your Olympic lifters, nothing like that. It was flat out bodybuilding. And those guys, and as well as I do, they're the first to fall out. You know what I mean? You go to the field or do something really or fighting or anything, man. It's just dude, they look good, but they can't back it up, man. So and then that's what I'm like, well, dude, what's more athletic, than being a cop or being, in the military, where you got to overcome obstacles, you got to get point A, point B, you do it under load, time restraints, this and that. And you got to be, and when you show up the objective area, you got to be ready to fight. You know what I mean? And that's the whole thing. It's dude, you can't, it's all that I do too, man. Dude, it's that's that. And I always laugh about, when guys show up to objective area, they're they're gasping for air. Dude, you can't be tactical if you're sucking wind. Right. You can't be tactical if you're getting ready to throw up, or you're getting tunnel vision, getting ready to fall out and see the wizard. I mean, come on,
Yeah, we just got here. Now it's time to work.
Dude, that's right. And you got to get back, what I mean? So, yeah, so. It's all good.
What I find really interesting about that is that's actually why I started to do more functional training, is because I was doing a lot of bodybuilding work. And then many years ago, like early on in CrossFit, a friend's dad, he adopted CrossFit super early. And he's like, you guys should do this real man's workout with me. And I'm like, what the, like, I'm like, dude, I'm lifting weights. Like, what are you talking about, a real man's workout? So he's like, come on. And I was like, okay, we'll skip, whatever bicep day today, and we'll go do whatever you want to do. And so we did this CrossFit workout. I think I was like 2 minutes in, and I was like completely gassed, couldn't finish the workout, like dead. And that was a huge eye opener to me, because I didn't, at that point, I didn't understand a lot about like what was behind fitness. And actually, I thought, doing the training I was doing was still going to be helpful, but it was all show, man. And none of it paid off for being fit or moving well or anything like that.
Yeah. No, that's true.
And I know that we have a lot of law enforcement and, military athletes listening to this. And so I think a lot of them have probably found themselves in the same situation of you, as being a little bit broken down. And you said, you kind of use a lot of kettlebell training to like rehab your back and stuff. Is there anything in particular, advice you could give those listening to maybe start with kettlebell training to start that rehab process?
Sure, absolutely. The one is the key here. The key to staying injury free is proper technique. I mean, that is the key. You gotta be technical. Now, guys in general, and dude, I'm as guilty as anybody, is like sometimes we don't pay the most attention to technique, and you kind of just want to just go for it and this and that. But really, take the time, learn technique. So 2 exercises I'd throw in there is one, just the Russian swing. Don't even worry about the American swing. Don't worry about taking overhead. Dude, just the 2-arm Russian swing. Get your mechanics down. And really, if you break it down, it's just the same mechanics as the deadlift. You know what I mean? Chest up, shoulders back and down, boom, drop from your hips, right? That's key. So for lower back, even for your knees, a friend of mine actually 2 guys I know recently one had a knee replacement, one snapped his knee when he was out hunting. Anyway, there's a bunch of circumstances there, but through the surgeries and stuff like that, they're done doing their rehab. I'm like, and they really weren't happy with like their progress. I'm like, dude, just go back, just do basic kettlebell work. So they just went back and started doing the swings, and both of them were like, dude, my knee is like 1,000% better. It's like, and it really, it's amazing. But anyway, so yeah, the Russian swing. Then for shoulders and basic mobility and stuff, the armbar stretch is huge. It's called the stretch. I didn't come up with the name, but it's really one of the best mobility exercises for your shoulder and strengthening exercise for that entire shoulder girdle. The armbar stretch is that, in conjunction with the Turkish get-up, is probably the main reason my right shoulder, both my shoulders, but definitely my right shoulder stays in place. Because here's the thing, I don't have anything in my right shoulder. There's nothing that anatomically anchors my right shoulder in place, and that's just how it is. So the only thing keeping my shoulder in place is all the stabilizer muscles and everything that I developed from doing armbar stretches, Turkish get-ups, and again going back to proper technique is very, very important. So that's it. So here's the thing, and not to get ahead of myself on this, but it's just like, because a lot of times people have a tendency, if they watch YouTube or if they look at some of the stuff I maybe done in the past, or, I got into kettlebell sport and, broke a fefew records or whatever, people, they just look at me, oh, that's just Jeff, that's what he does. But a lot of them don't realize that, because usually they come to 2 wrong conclusions if they don't know me. It's like, one, they think I'm like, maybe like I'm injury free, which is a joke, and 2, they think that like I'm some sort of natural athlete, which again is like not true. It's like anything that looks like I'm even semi coordinated in, it's because I got a lot of reps. Yeah. If you hang out with me long enough and if a movement pattern I'm unfamiliar with shows up, you'll see just how uncoordinated and how long it actually takes me to learn.
That's awesome. So I think that's awesome. Russian swings, armbar stretch, and Turkish get-ups. Now you've taught a lot of kettlebell courses over the years. Like, what is some like common mistakes you see when people are starting out with a kettlebell?
Really, the most common is not using their hips. You know, like sometimes people try to swing with their arms. They're not driving with their hips. You know, basically, and the other thing, it's not like basically if you could deadlift, you know, the same mechanics of deadlift, do the same mechanics in your kettlebell swing. So, you know, if you go deadlift like a standing vertical jump, swing. I mean, those are kind of the mechanics of it. You know what I mean? It's that hip extension. Hip extension's everything. Keeping the shoulders relaxed, good posture. I mean, that's pretty much it when it comes to swinging.
I have a question.
Breathing. What?
I have a question about like cycling and efficiency because I've noticed something maybe really amongst like competitive CrossFit athletes is, let's take an American swing for example. They'll if I just was training someone to do an American swing, they would, you know, go up right overhead. But when I see like a CrossFit Games athlete doing it for time, they're almost having to, it almost looks like a high pull snatch to over the head and then trying to, you know, rush that weight back down. What do you know what I'm talking about with that kind of?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that more aggressive, faster technique on the kettlebell swing?
Okay. That's an excellent question. And actually, when I go through the progression of Russian swing, American swing, when I'm teaching the course for CrossFit, they'll notice that the technique I show for the American swing is different than exactly what you described, what you see the high level CrossFitters do in the games, right? Because theirs is very vertical. It's very vertical. And so here's kind of the history of it, right? If you look at say, you know, if you look at I'm talking like probably I think it's 2002 CrossFit Journal, when they have a breakdown on the American swing. The American swing back then, it was done with straight arms. It was very, you know, very kind of circular movement, and yeah, it went overhead, but I don't know if the standard at that time was like where the kettlebell had to be straight up and down or whatever. But it for a movement, it's really nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? When Coach Glassman in 2006 asked me to be their kettlebell SME, and, you know, I explained like the mechanics of how you swing a kettlebell. Instead of going like super low, almost like in a squat on the bottom, it's more of a hinge. It's more like a deadlift, like hinge. You're hinging more than squatting, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. And so he's like, "Hey, rock on," you know what I mean? And so whatever. But then when what year was it? Was it 2009? It was one of the CrossFit Games at Aromas. It was the last CrossFit Games I was in Aromas. The standard of the kettlebell had to go straight overhead. You know, you need to see the ear, right? And the flat part of the kettlebell had to be straight up and down, right? So that was the standard. Now, the reason I kind of mention this, and because this is how things have changed because of the games, is like, so all the athletes during that games were swinging more the loopy style, right? It was a big arc. Yeah. Well, it just so happened that the kettlebells that were being used at the games that year was like an off-brand kettlebell where it was made out of rubber and the handle was longer than any other kettlebell handle out there. It's just so the combination of having that standard where that kettlebell had to be flat overhead and with that longer handle, it made it very, very difficult to stabilize that kettlebell overhead, especially when it's, you know, 32 kilo and you're doing like a lot of reps. So what was happening to a lot of athletes is when it came overhead, because that long handle, that kettlebell would just continue to flip back behind them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, there's some athletes that were like, they'd almost do like one rep at a time and literally just let the kettlebell like fall behind them. You know what I mean? Because they're getting frustrated. Well, because that was such a bad experience for those athletes, I swear it wasn't even like 2 months later. I was up CrossFit Reebok 1 there in Boston, and Spencer Hendel who competed that year, was also there. And dude, that's when all of a sudden I was watching him do American swings. That's when I started seeing. That's when all those athletes were like keeping it really close to their body and kind of popping it overhead because there's no fear of it flipping, because you know what I mean, they kind of took the swing portion out and kept it, and they cycled it more like a barbell, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you see. So having said all that, you can do it that way, and it's very fast. No doubt, it is very fast. But you can only do that way for so many reps, because it's also very taxing on your grip. Very taxing on your grip.
Yeah.
Now the way I teach American swing today, because of my experience with kettlebell sport, is I teach it a little. It's kind of hard to explain on the phone, but it's like, let's put it this way: it'll always be slower. You know what I mean? A little bit slower. If you go rep for rep, if somebody's doing American swing like you see in the games, those guys will always be faster if that's all you're doing. However, the benefit, the way I show it, is, dude, it totally saves your grip. Honestly, when you do American swings, the way I show it is like a form of active rest. You're literally catching your breath. You know what I mean? Your grip is relaxing, all this other stuff, and it preps you for the other events. Because there's never any time that you do American swings by themselves in a CrossFit event. Usually you're doing muscle ups, you could be doing rope climbing, you could be doing other stuff. So it comes back down to technique. And that's where, like, I blend like the CrossFit style of kettlebell lifting, that I teach today, is a blend of kettlebell sport technique. It's more of a hybrid style kettlebell sport technique, and kind of what some people would refer to as like hard style or RKC or something like that. You know what I mean? But I lean more towards the sports side because it's so efficient.
Yeah,
yeah.
I learned that the hard way. I think it was 2010, 2011. I was in a CrossFit competition, and it was the last workout in the competition, and it was the last workout. And then the guy next to me, it was basically just, I think it was just like running and kettlebell swings, but it was like 30 kettlebell swings per round. And so I would beat him on the run. I'd come back to the kettlebell, and I wasn't stopping. I didn't feel like I was going slow. And he was like, he'd make up all the time and then leave before me on the run on the kettlebell swings. I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, I didn't have time to, I was like, how do you swing a kettlebell faster than I'm swinging a kettlebell? And like, my buddy was there after the workout, because I ended up coming in second place because the guy beat me. He's like, dude, like, check out his technique, man. It's like totally different than what you're doing. It's so much faster. And I was like, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously I've been playing around with both types of swings for many years, but I've always been interested to get an expert's opinion on it.
Yeah. You know what? And this is it, like in the kettlebell world itself, like there's people always like arguing like what style, what's better than, like, it's kind of like my kung fu is better than your kung fu type attitude, Yeah. And it's like really what it comes down to is it's like, all right, what are we trying to achieve? You know what I mean? If you're going like, if you're, to me, if you're doing 30 reps or less, you know what I mean, whatever, if you want to, it'll always be faster. If you know what I mean, if you do more what I refer to as the game swing, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to pace myself, you know what I mean, not crush my grip or anything like that, which pretty much, yeah. It's funny, like if you're around like, and I'm sure you are, like the high level, like Olympic lifters, stuff like that, those guys, it makes me laugh because they're like, all right, they always refer to themselves as being lazy because they got good technique. They're like, hey, I'm a lazy lifter. That's why they got good technique. And I'm like, dude, I'm like that with kettlebell stuff. It's like, I try to be the most efficient I can. Because why? Because why do I need to work any harder than I need to? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and it's the same thing, man. Any high level sport, like even like boxing, like there's like old timers out there, you look at them, they got skinny arms, they got a pop belly, smoking a cigarette on the side. But dude, that guy could go in there and box your ears off for 10, 12 rounds and not even break a sweat. You know what I mean? Because his skill level's so high. So Yeah.
And that's something I've been talking to my athletes a lot lately is, things like not engaging your lats on the deadlift or keeping your chest up when you're squatting is your body will it's basic physics, the path of least resistance.
Yes.
That's what your body wants to do, but you have to fight that for so long before it becomes, this amazing technique and you become efficient at it. But in the meantime, if you don't, your body's going to do the easiest possible movement that it wants to when it's under load, and people have to be very mindful of that.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want one more question, and then we can kind of move on to some other stuff. But I want to talk about maybe some just like conditioning. Like, what are some conditioning workouts? Because you mentioned doing a lot of conditioning with a kettlebell that maybe some of our military and law enforcement could tackle.
Okay. Well, like one, you could always you could break it in almost like two categories. Is work a simple circuit. Like if you're just getting into kettlebells, obviously, like the guys I train here, I'll go through a little progression. I always start with just a Russian swing. All right, that looks pretty good. Then you could you want to keep the reps low. Like, okay, first of all, you could Tabata anything. That's always, even after I just went through the teaching progression, you do a simple Tabata, 20 seconds work, 10 seconds rest, repeat it 8 times. So really, if you're just doing a swing, what are you getting? 12 reps maybe? You're not getting that many. And but yet you're still practicing good form. Your form's not breaking down. Once they're looking pretty good, then I like combining like swings with rowing. Do like 250 meter row, do 20 swings. Do that 5 rounds, 10 rounds. It's pretty complimentary.
Right.
Well, swings, burpees. I mean, you can mix it up however you want.
All right.
Now let me throw this out when it comes to technique, right? As you build up, because a lot of people always want to do a kettlebell snatch, but they don't realize that the snatch, like in barbell, like anybody who's done like Olympic lifting, it's very common in the barbell community. Like everybody accepts, what I'm going to say here is that they're like, you know what, it'll probably take your entire life to try to perfect your snatch. You know what I mean? And everybody's like, rock on. They're always trying to get better with the snatch because it's the most technical of the barbell lifts, right?
Yeah.
The same is true with the kettlebell snatch. You know what I mean? It's very, very technical. Now this is where a lot of people kind of, you could gut it out for 30 reps and things like that. But how you're really technical, how you're really doing well with a snatch is, dude, try to snatch one hand for 5 minutes straight. Switch the other hand, go 5 minutes. Now, you know what I mean? And there's no rest. You know what I mean? So try that with a 16 kilo and see if you do that. You know what I mean? It's just, so how do you get more efficient technique, when it comes to like snatching? Dude, boom, is you get more reps and it's running things unbroken. So that's really, and that's where, and this is very, I didn't even realize this until I started getting into kettlebell sport. This kettlebell sport is like, it's really like, it's classified as a cyclical sport. So you get the same cardiovascular benefit as, cycling, rowing, running, swimming, things like that. Right. And it's the same thing, but it's like a 10-minute sport. And so you try to run everything unbroken, and the breathing, and this totally ties in. The breathing for kettlebell sport ties into really the breathing you're seeing a lot being talked about now in CrossFit when you're cycling, pacing, all that stuff comes totally like, together.
And what kind of breathing do you normally recommend?
All right. Now there's 2 types of breathing you can do. You got anatomical and you got mechanical. In other words, like guys that do more what they call hard style or whatever for kettlebell lifting, it's one breathing cycle, right? So you inhale, like say like on the downswing, you inhale through your nose, pressurize your abs, all that. As you extend your hips, you exhale, kind of like a fighter exhales through his teeth. Boom. That's great. That's great for, it's going to give you a lot of power for maybe 20 reps, maybe 30 reps. But then you're going to hit the wall and you're done. Yeah. So in sport, if I was just say I'm just doing Russian swing, right? Now that's not part of sport, but I'll use the Russian swing to teach you breathing. So there's 2 breathing cycles. You know what I mean? So in other words, as the kettlebell is going, it's always when the kettlebell swings, you know, as it swings to the, you know, on the backswing, it hits the apex of the backswing. Anytime you fold it over, it is important that you do have air like in your abs and stuff. It helps protect your spine and all that. But it's like, so you inhale on the way, when you hit that portion, as your hips are extending, there's an exhale as it's floating. It's another inhale, exhale. Then it says like, there's like 2 breathing cycles throughout it. Now, and this is it's hard to explain like over the phone. But the other difference between like, say, a hard style and a guy who does sport is there's also a double knee bend. Like, because the double knee bend's more efficient, like you use that in sport. It's just like Olympic weightlifting. The way your knees like, you know what I mean? So now you're doing that with the kettlebell. And dude, it's just like, so you're always matching the breath with the movement. So in a simple swing, so as the kettlebell's coming down, my knees slightly bend, you know what I mean? So it's like, I gotta be in motion here. Yeah. So as my knees bend, it's like a little exhale. As the kettlebell's, you know, swinging, you know, between my legs and come back up, my legs are extending. Nice, easy inhale. As the kettlebell's swinging back down, knees slightly bent. Exhale. Inhale as they extend. So it's very relaxed. So you get 2 breathing cycles, you know, the way so every time your knees bend, you get a slight exhale. Every time they straighten out, inhale. So you got 2 breathing cycles for every 1 rep. So that means what? It means you have more oxygen flowing through your system, and you're not going to hit that deficit. And because that's why guys hit the wall. It's like if you know, like in the beginning of CrossFit, they always talked about, you know, the intensity piece and moving at an unsustainable pace, right? And that's why like you're good for like maybe 30 reps, and then you do hit the wall. Because you're in such an oxygen deficit. But when you look at like, you know, is like, and Rich Fronin's like the best. He is like the poster boy for CrossFit. He's a poster boy for like pacing and breathing. Like, do you ever see Rich ever look like he's ever rushed? You know what I mean?
No.
He's like
Yeah.
And his technique is like perfect. You know what I mean? It's like I don't ever recall ever seen a bad rep. Like all his reps are always the same, and he's because. You know, and that's how like the kettlebell sport lifters are. It's like those guys, like they're like, especially the Russians, their first rep and their last rep are like exactly the same, but they got their breathing, their pacing, and all that. And it's the same thing when you're doing the snatch. And then once you get the rhythm of that, and it's like, you know, like if you run, it's like say you're running, then all of a sudden, you know, like then once you kind of hit the groove. And there's like a rhythm of your breathing, whether it's like, you know, 3x for every time your foot hits is exhale, exhale, then inhale, whatever rhythm you fall into. All of a sudden it's like, dude, you could, as long as you're breathing like that and you maintain that, it's like, dude, you could go for quite a distance. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude, like you're in the zone. It's the exact same thing. And it's not that way. Like the breathing in kettlebell sport is just like that. And dude, that is the key. And now you're seeing that. You know, the CrossFitters definitely caught on to that, and you're hearing a lot of that and seeing a lot of that, and you're seeing some great results. So, and it relaxes your mind too. So go ahead.
I know that's something I struggled with for such a long time, and it's something I'm still working on, to be honest, because I knew I would get like doing like a heavy metabolic workout, you know, some sort of like intense CrossFit style workout. It'd be all lungs. Like I didn't feel like my heart was like out of control. My muscles weren't really burning that bad, but I could not breathe. You know, I just absolutely could not breathe. And I was like, there's got to be some sort of like trick to this. I got to be able to fix this. And I really started focusing on my breathing and taking more of active role in doing something about it as opposed to just letting it happen. And it really has helped me over the last several years get a lot better at just fitter in general. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, man. We're going to move to the quickfire questions of the show. Are you ready?
All right, man.
All right. What's the hardest workout you've ever done?
All right. It's a 10. The absolute hardest one was when it's a 10-minute long cycle. 10-minute long cycle with 2 32-kilogram kettlebells. That's I did it in competition. Like I said earlier, you don't put the bells down, and I got 62 reps. Totally had to pace it out, and that was the absolute hardest.
Oof, that sounds really brutal and heavy.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I don't recommend it. You know, what I mean, I don't recommend it. Yeah, yeah, it's tough.
I mean, in your opinion, what's the best activity for building mental toughness?
Is doing long cycle. It really is. That is like, if you're doing a 10-minute set, because now here's the thing: there's people doing 5-minute sets and stuff like that now. There's different competitions that are short, great, but dude, 10 minutes is very hard. If you're doing, like, say, if I'm doing a snatch event, what do I know? I'm like, I know, like, at 5 minutes I can switch hands, right? Or I guess, you know, it's just like you got to break. But when you're 5 minutes into a long cycle set and you're like, crap, man, I got another 5 minutes. It is like, yeah, it is. It's very disheartening, man. It's very disheartening. You got to really, like, you got to focus on your breathing, relaxing. And it's, in my opinion, that's probably one of the most mentally tough things I had to do.
And so when you're resting, are you primarily doing or pacing? Are you resting it in the front rack position? Is that like because it seems there's no comfortable spot there. I'm just wondering.
No, it's not comfortable. I tell you what, there's two places, like I mentioned earlier, there's two places you can rest: in the front rack or overhead. Right now, guys who got great shoulder mobility, which I do not, you know what I mean? And they got great, dude, they can literally lock out overhead and they're like, and they just kind of breathe and they're relaxing, right? Now I don't got that shoulder mobility. I get my rep overhead, boom. So now I'm in the rack and you're like trying to rest in the rack. Now in sport, you rest, you stick your elbows should be like really making contact with the top of your hip bones. That's where, like, you know, and so it's bone on bone contact. So it's not taxing your lungs as much. You know what I mean? It's not like totally compressing your chest, but it's super uncomfortable, man. It takes a while to build the flexibility in that. But here's the key, though. It goes back to the breathing, right? And you'll see, and I'll tie this into high level Olympic lifting too, is like anytime you have weight on your chest, you're in the rack position, you'll see like in sport, all of the coaches tell you, dude, just focus on your exhale. It's like a little puff of air, just like that. It's like, because if you just focus on the exhale, this little puff is like the negative pressure in your lungs is going to suck the air back in, but it's not taxing. If you're doing big breathing, it's not taxing all the muscles, you know what I mean, all your respiratory muscles and things like that. So that's one of the key of relaxing. And dude, you could feel your muscles actually, even if you're in an overhead position, you breathe the exact same way, you could feel your muscles relax. And it's just like, but everything has to go back down to good mobility, right? Where it's bone on, if you're in the rack, bone on bone structure, right? Elbows are on your hip bones. If it's overhead, if you got good flexibility in your shoulders, elbow, everything's boom, nice straight line, dude, that's going to help you. Going back to Olympic lifting, if you see guys, when they get, like, say they're doing a clean and jerk, boom, they just nice, heavy clean, they got it on the chest. Even like, yes, it's like when they do the jerk, they'll take that breath of air, kind of hold it, boom, and drive it, right? But the high level guys don't hold their breath for any length of time when they got weight on their chest. You'll see them, like, if they're like trying to get their hands right or whatever, that's exactly how they're breathing. They're doing the exact same thing kettlebell lifters doing. They're like, because what do they know? They know that if you hold your breath, anytime you hold your breath, there's a, you know what I mean, you're going to have that, you're going to start creating oxygen that, but what's worse is when you got weight on your chest, right? It also jacks with your blood pressure and stuff. And that's why a lot of times you'll see guys, if that combination of holding your breath, having weight on your chest, they'll do a movement. Then when they put the weight down, all of a sudden you see them, boom, they'll just fall out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of that. Yeah. So that's like the biggest key. So yeah. So if you're quote resting in the rack, dude, keep breathing. Just focus on your exhale.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. If you could only have one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Man, that's such a tough one. I would say, yeah, because I'm a kettlebell guy, kettlebell. But, dude, honestly, I'd have to go with three. I'd say kettlebell, heavy bag, and a set of rings. If you got those three, dude, you're good to go for the rest of your life.
Set for life.
That's right.
All right, man. Last question of the show. What is the best advice you have for becoming a better human? And this can be 100% open-ended.
Oh man, honestly, there used to be anyway, man, I'm not going to talk. There's a joke I was going to throw out there, but pretty much this is like, be a better human is honestly get in the Word of God, read Scripture. It's like a purifier. You know what I mean? It's like a water purification system. You know what I mean? That's it. Let the Word of God change you. You know what I mean? And you'll be good to go.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I really appreciate that answer. So I'm sure people want to learn more about you and what you're doing. Where can people go to learn more about all you have going on?
Easiest place to find me is on tacticalathlete.com. And and it has a ton of resources there for you. And it shows whenever I'm training, got stuff going on with CrossFit and stuff. I do law enforcement, whatever. So that's it.
All right, perfect. All right, man. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome. I've learned so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Jared. Thanks for having me.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.